Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to something we've not done in a while outside of a race weekend, a Sunday waffle. How are we all doing? Good to have you with me. This afternoon I've got Will here shortly. We're going to talk about, look, I needed a topic for the stream. It made sense to do something Imola related, so we're going to look at rescheduling Imola, which, spoiler alert, isn't going to happen. And as Jack pointed out in chat before we got going, isn't it kind of obvious why it's not going to happen? Yes, it is, but some people apparently need that explaining. So we're gonna go into that in a bit of detail very, very shortly. We'll also look ahead to Monaco, everyone's favourite race of the season. Oh yes, Monaco, woohoo, and all that business. And of course, maybe look ahead to the rest of the season as well. And we've got loads of your questions that you've sent on Twitter in the community section as well. I want to get through, and we'll take yours in chat too. So hopefully you are all very well. Don't worry, we'll be done well in time for Indy Quali later, and we'll try and make sure we're done early next week as well. So there's no problems with clashing with the 500, because I think quite a few of you might fancy watching that. Maybe, possibly. Jonty's here. I know for a fact Jonty will want to watch that and probably has watched every second of it so far. Good afternoon, Will, mate. I don't think I've ever had you on a waffly Sunday stream, so prepare for God knows where we end up. How you doing, mate?
Hello, man. I'm good. I'm excited, to be fair. I love a good waffle, so should be good fun.
Yeah, favourite topping of a waffle? Chat.
Chocolate and banana.
Chocolate and banana. Wow. This isn't actually where this stream's going to go, by the way. Don't worry. Everyone listening in now going, oh, for God's sake, here he goes again. Yeah. Should we start? Look, we'll start with Imola. It is obviously the big talking point. It got cancelled. I'm going to ask you, Will, I think out of everything I've seen online, there's about 3 people in the world who think it was the wrong decision. I assume you think absolutely correct call by F1, and I'm guessing as well, great to actually get a decision nice and early for a change and not COVID 2020 Australia 7 minutes before FP1 or whatever it was.
Well, it was wet, Sean, wasn't it?
Just a tad, yeah.
Just a little bit. No, they made the right call. As obviously, I think as Formula One fans, we all wanted to see racing, but you've got to look at the situation and be realistic about it. And yeah, it was nice. It was a nice change to see the FIA being competent. And I had to have some people joking around saying, "Oh, it's the most what was it they said? It's the best handle the race has been from the FIA." And they were insinuating because it didn't happen. But in reality, I think Formula One did quite a good job in assessing the situation early, making a call early, and also meaning we weren't. It doesn't impact Monaco next week as well, because I know there were a few fears of that over whether teams would be even able to get their cars back from the Imola garages and get them transported to Monaco in time. So I think generally it was handled really well. So well done to F1 and the FIA, which is a sentence I don't think I've ever had to say before. So good on you guys.
You're right, Will. You sound unwell, mate, saying things like that. That's not healthy. Don't say that too often. No, it was the right call, and it was smart to make that, good to make that decision as quickly as it did. And like you say on the Monaco stuff, just to anyone who's not been keeping up with the news, I think it was on Thursday, essential personnel were allowed into the paddock to pack everything up. I think they're already on their way to Monaco, a lot of them, so everything should be okay for next weekend. But I suppose that's another point to make, with hindsight, I suppose, but if the race had been forced to go ahead this Sunday, could you imagine if they couldn't get out tomorrow morning to head off to Monaco, what kind of, excuse the language, but shitstorm that would cause for Formula One? So I think absolutely the right decision. I have had a couple of people, one in particular who, brace yourself, Will, and try not to laugh too hard, said, and I'll quote, I even wrote it down, typical woke response to a little bit of rain. Now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they've not kept on top of the news, because that was more than a little bit of rain, and it's nothing to do with wokeness. It's to do with not wanting to see people get killed when people are already literally losing their lives.
It was like that. If we'd raced, it would have been like that Mario Kart level that's underwater. It's silly.
Yeah, you know the internet. Let's not do that there. But let's talk about rescheduling it. Now, I said at the start, I don't think we're going to see Imola this year. A few people have said to me that there's plenty of space in the schedule. I'm looking at the calendar now and trying not to laugh too hard. I'm not quite sure where it fits. I said it on Wednesday. Some suggested after Spain. The problem with after Spain, I'll pop the calendar on the screen, but the problem with after Spain is you are then Monaco, Spain, Imola and Canada back to back to back to back, ending in North America. That's never going to happen, for one. And two, but just because they don't want to do 4 back to back. In fact, I think there was an article from Luke Smith the other day who described the idea of 4 races back to back as a line that F1 will not cross. People already don't like the triple headers in F1. They're not going to go with 4 back to back. But also, that's like a couple of weeks away, 2 or 3 weeks away. That region could still be in a hell of a lot of trouble and might still be struggling to recover. They're not going to be ready to host a Grand Prix before Canada. You can't do it after Canada for the same, very similar reasons. You'd start in North America, 4 races back to back all the way to Silverstone. You can't put it between Silverstone and Hungary because then you've got 5 races back to back. The only slot I've found, Will, and this is why I don't think it'll happen, is in that protected 4-week gap in that we call the summer break. Obviously, only, if you're new to Formula One, only 14 days is the summer break. So teams can choose to close their factory down for any consecutive 14 days in that 4-week period. If you eat into that, then you're kind of causing the team some problems. But the only slots I've got, and I'll pop that on screen as well, is to put Imola either directly after Belgium or right before Zandvoort, which only actually leaves kind of a 3-week gap to fit those 14 consecutive days in and get back from Belgium or head off to Zandvoort. So that's the only slot I can see, because they're not going to even entertain the idea of going to Imola after Japan and before Qatar. That's just not going to happen in a 4 race back-to-back thing. So that's all I've got, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen, mate. I'd be amazed. And I suppose if you want some news on this, I'm going to butcher his name, Angelo Sticci Damiana, the president of the Automobile Club of Italy, has said it on Wednesday that it's, quote, reasonable to imagine that the 2023 edition will be held in 2026. So extend the contract for a year like we saw in COVID, hold the race, then they recover their losses, don't they? And that's probably what's going to happen. But can you see anywhere to slot it in? Have you spotted these imaginary gaps that people keep telling me are there?
No, I'm with you on that. Sorry, that's all I've got. I don't think it will even go in that Belgium Zandvoort space. I don't think even though we have technically had a mini summer break, you could argue with China called off, if they couldn't fit that back into the calendar anywhere, then they're not going to do the same to Imola. So no, I just don't think we're going to get it this year, which is a shame. But equally, it's not like we are sort of lacking for races this season. We've already got. Is it 22 now? I can't remember.
We're never breaking that record, are we? It'll always be 22. We're never having any more than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because I like Imola. I think it's a great track, and we've had some really good races there in the short time since it's been back on the calendar. But again, we'll get it. We'll get it next year. It's it's not the end of the world. And yeah, a shame, but it's just, it is what it is, and I think our focus needs to more be on making sure that region is 100%, is back to where it should be.
I absolutely agree. And on that note, F1 and Ferrari have both donated 100 million euros each to the cause, which is fantastic. I was just, a couple of people saying in the chat, by the way, why not put it after Monza? Because it's sort of, I'm guessing, Italy and Italy. The problem is then you've got Netherlands, Monza, Imola, and then Singapore, Japan. So you've got 5 races back to back, including a trip from Europe to Singapore and onto Japan. They're not going to do 4 in a row, and they're certainly not going to do 5 in a row, and they're certainly not going to do a quintuple header. Is that even a word? Like that one, they're definitely not going to do that. Thank you very much to Bill Asher, the man with the predictions, who had us all very nervous last year. Good to see you, mate. Thank you so much for your super chat. Says, beers on me, glad to make it for a good waffle. Thank you so much, mate. That's really, really generous of you, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Did I say 100 million? Not for the super chat. That'd be very generous, Bill. Thank you very much. 1 million euros. If I said 100 million, sorry, it was 1 million euros each. Ferrari and F1 making contributions, and I think there's fundraising as well. I think AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo in particular, are really pushing that one. So, 1 million each, which I think, there'll be people out there on the internet going, could be more. It probably could, but it's better than nothing, which was there before. So, obviously, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, or it should go without saying. Thoughts with everyone in the region. Condolences to all those who have tragically lost loved ones. It looks horrendous. I mean, I don't want to get too much into this, Will, because it'll sound like I'm just going off on one or something. I don't know. But, in the UK, quite lucky with the weather over here, aren't we? We have our moments, but to see that, it's horrendous. So obviously thoughts with everyone in the region.
We moan about it a lot over here, but in reality, we get it pretty good, don't we?
And hopefully, let's put it this way, 2020, extend that contract by 1 year, 2026. Let's have a blast in 2024, and let's really do something special in 25 and 26. Well, I'm sure they'll do something. I mean, next year is going to be quite an emotional Imola anyway, because they're obviously going to want to do something for what's going on right now, but it's also 30 years since Senna and Ratzenberger were killed next year at Imola. So it's going to be quite an emotional weekend. That's a year away yet, though. So I don't see where it slots in the calendar. I think it will be a case of extending that contract, running it in 26. It makes sense. I can't see Formula One teams agreeing to break up that summer break, that 4-week period, because it is embedded in the regulations. But there is also the point to be made that the fact Imola are already issuing refunds or offering refunds for people or being able to turn their tickets into 2024 tickets kind of says that they've probably already accepted it's not happening this year in some ways, because they're not saying you can hold them for later in the year. They're just saying you can have them as 2024 tickets or get a refund. Stefano Domenicali says they'll have a look at it. I think his words were, I didn't write it down, I meant to and I forgot it. It's something along the lines of we owe it to them to try and reschedule it, but it's not going to happen. If you think, in chat, I've seen a couple of people say get rid of Qatar and put Imola in there. Somebody say replace Abu Dhabi with Imola. I'm sure a few people would agree. Let's not even bother with Monaco. We'll just shuffle everything up and we'll pop Imola in a little bit later in the year or something like that. But I'll see what people are saying in chat. Anything you want to add, Will, before we keep rolling on, mate? Feel free. It's a good waffle, so you can go anywhere you want with this.
Careful. I think we've hit the nail on the head, and as I say, it's good. It was nice to see as well some of the drivers going up and helping. I think Yuki was the one that's appeared on my Twitter feed the most, going out and helping the locals, which is really good to see, and it adds a whole new human level to the drivers, which is great.
John said replace Abu Dhabi with Halford's car park for all I care would still be a better race.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Is it Heine Sten says Imola in December? Laughing face. That could be absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I'd fancy it'd be like Turkey all over again, wouldn't it? With that slippery track, it'd be lovely. Let's do it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Fact is, Italian authorities won't ask for rescheduling. San Marino, always my favourite track, says Go-Kart Bob. It was Fanta Boy who said take Qatar out and replace it with Imola. Easy. Del says hold the race during the summer break and F1 donates some of the proceeds to charity for the region. That's quite a nice idea, actually. I like that. There is a mandatory 4-week gap for the summer break. Yeah, it's a weird one. It's in the regulations, isn't it, the Weberist, that that's kind of a protected 4 weeks, but actually the factories are only shut for 14 consecutive days and the teams get to pick any 14 days they want so long as it is consecutive. So I just feel like in situations like that, if Imola said, hey, we'd like to host if possible after Belgium, and F1 say they could do it, it'd be nice if teams would go, well, I'll tell you what, this year we'll all shut down for 14 days at the same time right in the middle of the month, and then we'll be fine to get back from Imola and fine to set off for Zandvoort. I know that's all in the perfect world and the perfect scenario, but that's never going to happen. We did have the spring break, like you say, Will, and we've got an extra weekend here, but a lot of people did travel, didn't they, to Imola, so it's not really a weekend off for them as such. But yeah, I'd be amazed if we see it again before next year, which I'm with you, Will. I love Imola. It's one of my favourite tracks. I mean, I watched the Senna movie last night. Emotional. Especially at the end, by the way. Sorry to get really morbid, but at the end where it's like Ayrton Senna died at the age of 34, and I'm like, wow, that's 3 years younger than me. Christ. But yeah, I watched that and I started thinking, why is Imola my favourite track again? But I just love it. I don't know why. I quite like this layout as well. Getting rid of that last chicane has really, I don't know, giving it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And here's an idea that has just come to me, and there's probably a way that it doesn't work. But what if you had a non-championship round after Abu Dhabi in December, and you use it almost as a test bed as well to test out, say, a new sprint format or some sort of new idea that F1 want to trial for 2024 or beyond? That way, Imola get to host an event. It would be in December. It wouldn't impact the championship at all. The main drivers don't even have to race. If anything, they could put some young guns in there. The teams could put, say, Red Bull puts Lawson in the car, see how that all turns out. I think that could be a lot of fun. But again, that's really stretching it. But just an idea. Thought I'd throw that out there.
No, it's one of those things, like not to pee all over it straight away, but it's one of those things that's never going to happen, but it's a nice idea, like you say, because you could run it as a rookie race or a reserve driver race, so that it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't impact on anything, but then you've also got to consider the cost cap with things like that. And I know you know all this, Will, and it's just an idea, but I'm just putting it out there before someone shouts at you. What about there it is. Connor says, will it be in the budget cap? I was waiting for somebody.
Or more sprints. Awesome.
More sprints.
I can taste the sarcasm.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a couple of comments from chat then on Imola, and then we'll roll on to looking ahead to Monaco, and then we're going to do lots of Q&A as well. So we'll try and sort of, we're not going to be 2.5 hours. Don't worry. It is just nice to hang out with you all on Sunday. I think the problem is I got in the mindset this was a race weekend, so I couldn't not stream tonight. It's weird. I know. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's a weird thing. Just checking through my notes, see if there's anything. I've mentioned the refunds, haven't I? I'm rolling the tickets over, so that's fine. Common practice during COVID-19 to extend contracts if races were missing. Actually, just on that note, do you think we'll see China again, Will?
I think so. Are they not planning to get it back for neck year?
I think so, but
I feel like that's more or less set in stone thing, and I feel like it was more or less set in stone for this year as well. But I think we'll see it back. I'm personally, I guess, impartial on the Chinese Grand Prix. I know some people love it, but I was just never a massive fan. I don't dislike the circuit, but I don't like it either. So I don't mind. But yeah, I think we'll still see it back probably next year, early in the calendar, in a similar sort of slot where it was meant to be this year.
Yeah.
But they have now, I think, calmed all the regulations and and all the COVID stuff. So I don't see there being any potential block now for it. But I might be wrong on that.
It's just come to me now. Now you've said that, there is some talk that China will stay in and around where it was scheduled to be, and that Japan will be brought forward to that time of year. They're going to start finally sort of planning the calendar by region, so that we go to China and then we go to Japan afterwards, rather than going to China and then on to Europe or on to somewhere else. So they're actually going to start doing it properly. But the only thing I find interesting about that is I guarantee you they won't do Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Abu Dhabi all together.
Oh God, no. But I tell you what though, Japan early in the season, given how notorious that track can be from a car killing standpoint, that could be a lot of fun. A very early Japanese Grand Prix could be very interesting.
I was going to say, I'm not sure what the weather's like, but then how many times have we got typhoons in the area for Japan when we do get there anyway? So it might not make much of a difference, but there you go. If China returns, which end of the calendar would it go? We've kind of, I've just said that MD Games, but thank you very much. Rescheduled as the final race for Imola, says Silver Raven Moon. MD also says, use Imola for the young driver test at the end of the year. Could be an option. There's something on there, isn't there? But I think it's just easier logistically to do it in Abu Dhabi while you're there, isn't it? So maybe that's not going to happen, but it's fair. Yeah, Big Man Pat says more sprints. Awesome. You read the sarcasm in that one, Will. You got it straight away. If the long shot of rescheduling happens, could you see the Saturday, Sunday only would be repeated, says Phil Jones. Yes. I did wonder if this weekend if they did push ahead with it, if we just get Saturday FP1 and qualifying and then Sunday the race, or even if they really had to push ahead contractually and were determined to do it. I did wonder if we might even get, as bonkers as it sounds, qualifying Sunday morning and the race Sunday afternoon and just have a one-day event, which could make for a very exciting race, especially given that it was supposed to rain anyway there. So could have been fun. And one more on Imola before we roll on to Monaco, if there's anything else. John says, have a production car race afterwards. Only a car made. The team can compete. Unlucky Williams break out the Renault Clios. Yes, Max is doing a fundraiser. Yes, he is to Everest. He's on Twitch, isn't he? Is it Redline? Redline Racing or something like that?
That rings a bell, yeah.
Yep, so that's good stuff for them. Let's roll on let's talk about Monaco then. We can come back to any more Imola stuff in Q&A in around about 15-20 minutes time, so save your questions. We're gonna give you a good hour, don't worry, we hope. So Monaco, excited, Will, for qualifying.
Yeah, no, I'm genuinely excited. I am one of the very rare people now on this planet that actually likes Monaco, and I don't even, well, no, I know why. It's because Monaco is one of my earliest F1 memories from I mean, I can't, I must have been 2 or 3 years old maybe, but I loved Monaco as a kid, mainly because it had a tunnel, and 2 and 3 year old me loved the fact that it had a tunnel and thought it was the best thing in the world. And ever since then, I've just loved Monaco for being Monaco. So I'm excited. Qualifying's good. The race may not always be great, but we had a good race last year. It may have taken rain and Schumacher to split his car in half, but we had a good race last year. So I'm holding out hope. And my thing with Monaco is I don't think it's necessarily the track's fault. It's more that the cars have got bigger and are now not suited to that track. And if the rumors for 2026 are to be believed, which is that the cars will get smaller again, I think Monaco could become a good race, maybe in the future if we just give it time and give it hope. But yeah, I like I said, I'm a Monaco supporter through and through, and I will always be, even though I've seen Ricardo lose race wins there and all the trauma that's come with that. I do love Monaco. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologise. It's weird with Monaco because I poke fun at it because I know, having watched for 3 decades, exactly what we're going to get. You know, you're going to get dull races in Monaco. If things, I mean, look, you just mentioned Ricardo. I mean, he literally, he had 3 million horsepower missing one year and still managed to win the race, didn't he? As if once you're out front, you're pretty much okay with these cars. But as much as I poke fun at Monaco, it's when COVID hit, it was the one race I missed the most, which made no sense at all because it was probably the one race that would have had no excitement in it whatsoever. And qualifying's fantastic. But it didn't change my view of Monaco because I like the Monaco weekend. It's historic. It's part of Formula One. And like I say, if the cars could get a bit smaller or a lot smaller, then maybe the racing would be epic again. But I look at things like Mansell and Senna, 92, when people talk about how bad Monaco is, can't overtake. How epic was that? We still talk about that now. It was still one of the great battles, but there was no overtaking there. Senna couldn't get past, Mansell couldn't get past. So it wasn't like it was they were overtaking each other every lap. That was still a great overtake. There's not overtaking fest, a great racing story. We've got many from Formula One. Can you remember that year? I always forget the year. Someone in chat will remind me. I know exactly where I'm going with it if they're here as a regular, where you've got Button and Alonso and Vettel running close together, and we don't know who's going to come out on top, what's going to happen, a tyre's going to fall off, and then the red flag kind of came along and spoiled that. But we had that great race. Monaco does throw up some good racing. It's just never going to be an overtaking fest, and you can have an epic race with no overtakes. It's about close racing. If they can get close, they can follow each other close. If they can try a side-by-side, if we get to witness the side-by-side action of Monaco and not cut to a replay of Lance Stroll, you can actually really enjoy the Monaco Grand Prix. Good news, by the way, on Monaco, reported by Motorsport Broadcasting, that from this season, Formula One will now produce its own television coverage of Monaco's Grand Prix, which ends the thing we've had for many years now, where the local broadcaster directs the race. Formula One have taken that on in-house now. So all the jokes about, like, we're going to lose the meme of Lance Stroll being cut to when we see the one bit of side-by-side action all afternoon. That is unlikely to happen again. Having said that, FOM are pretty keen on missing some action, so we'll probably still miss something. Maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the nice little technicalities of Monaco. You never really know what you're going to be watching. Are you going to be watching the main battle on track, or are you going to be watching Lance Stroll run wide at the hairpin, or yeah, it's. Well, I'm amazed they kept it for as long as they did, because they were atrocious. The TV coverage at Monaco was just a massive downgrade. I'm amazed they were allowed to get away with it for as long as they did. But maybe we have had overtaking at Monaco this whole time. We just never known about it.
Exactly.
I mean, for all we know, there's been 100 odd overtakes that we've just never seen because they were too busy focused on the Aston Martin and Stroll. So
Yeah.
maybe hold out hope, positive thinking.
I'll bring it up as well again. I don't think I've said this to you, Will. I've mentioned it on stream quite a few times, but I cannot remember. What I should have done is screenshot the comment because it was bang on. Somebody commented last year or the year before on one of the Monaco videos saying that, people poke fun at Monaco, but this is a world championship of teams and drivers, and maybe they look at Monaco as the weekend where the team and the pit crew and the strategists matter more, and maybe this is their race, so it sort of adds to the world championship and adds to making it more of a team world championship, because we've got a race like Monaco where, as we saw with Ferrari last year, if the strategists cock it up, then you can lose everything. Whereas if they get it right, they look like a hero and you can get an amazing result. So maybe that's a way to look at it for people who don't get excited about the race. I don't know. But, Saturday will be the day, won't it, that everybody focuses on the most initially, because especially if let's say Max Verstappen gets pole, probably going to disappear with it, isn't he? Let's be honest. Or Checo gets pole and Max isn't up there with him, or vice versa, then it's probably going to be a comfortable Red Bull win. But also they can dictate the pace, so it could also be a very close race in that they've got the lead. So why push like crazy? You may as well manage the pace, manage the tyres, manage the engine, manage the car, and then just push around the pit stops, which I don't like that in Formula One, but it's kind of what Monaco is now in a way, isn't it? It's look after your car, don't stick it in the wall, and then around the pit stops, push so you're not overcut or undercut, or how it feels sometimes.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's just, I think, due to the nature that Monaco is at the moment. And I sort of go back to what I said earlier with the 2026 regs. If these rumours, and I say rumours, but they're now being mentioned on the official F1 YouTube channel as rumours, so they've got to be fairly well placed that the cars are going to get smaller. Then I'm hoping this pain that we have to put up with at the moment isn't going to last forever, and we can get sort of smaller cars racing Monaco. Look at Formula E, for instance. Formula E, as much as I rip into it, has good racing, and a lot of that, I think, comes down to the fact that the cars are just smaller and easier to navigate around. They are. I mean, I feel Gen 3 is slightly better. I'll give them that, but they do race well, and I've got to give them that. So yeah, I hope that if Formula One finally starts going back in the direction of the lighter, smaller cars that we used to have in the past, we can get some great races at Monaco again. And I feel like the smaller, lighter cars will be better to watch as well. It's why you get a lot more excitement watching a 2002 Ferrari go around the track, and it just looks a lot more exciting than, say, the current crop of cars. They just are so much lighter and more agile.
Red Raven says we need more than one pit stop. Bring up Pirelli and ask for a supreme soft tyre just for Monaco. It's an idea. I mean, they're bringing the softest.
Just jelly.
No great surprise, but just just falls apart the minute you put it on. 25 stop race. It's the only way it's going to be any good. Del says 1 millimetre smaller, even 10 centimetres won't help in Monaco. Barely anywhere else either. Formula E is Will's favourite racing series, says Big Man Pat. And also, we've learnt today that Will loves a tunnel. So there you go. If you've learnt nothing else from this stream, you now know that. Will loves a tunnel.
That could be misinterpreted, man.
I'm just going to roll on. Zach says bring out the sprinklers.
Not through a tunnel.
Jonty says old school quali tyres. And Michael, really not a fan of Monaco, says down to quali pit stops. Quali and pit stops, nothing to do with the drivers. Well, it is to do with the drivers because they've got to keep it out the wall. In fairness, they've still not got to crash the car, and it does tend to separate. I'm going to word it nicely. The cream rises to the top. Let's put it that way. They've got to keep it out the wall, but it's largely a team race for me now when I look at it like that, until we can get smaller cars, as we keep saying, for example. But that's fine because we have a Constructors' Championship as well, which awards the money. So there is something I wanted to bring up, actually. Mercedes are, apparently, a spokesman told a number of outlets that they will be bringing the update to the W14 in Monaco, which was a big surprise when I read that, because if you're going to bring a big update somewhere, you don't bring it to Monaco. Then I expected it to be Spain. So they are going to bring it, apparently. Toto Wolff confirmed in Miami the update will include new bodywork, a new floor, and new front suspension. So all the stuff that's going to break very nicely against a barrier if somebody makes a mistake. Not predicting that anybody will, but you never know, do you? So interesting. And I caught something this morning I think it was an F1's YouTube. I kind of flicked through it because I wasn't really too fussed, but I had a little look in to see what they were doing. And I think they were talking about the idea that drivers need to know or really do need to know their cars and be comfortable in their cars for Monaco. So they're quite surprised that the update's coming because, of course, the car will feel, I know they'll have run it in the simulators, but the car will feel different to what they were running a couple of weeks ago in Miami. So they're quite surprised that they're going to run it and the drivers are going to need the time to get up to speed, aren't they? I guess is the point with that. So I am surprised. I've said it again. I am surprised they're bringing it to Monaco, but Mercedes are in a position where they just need to get the parts on the car, don't they, Will? Because it's not been by their standards, it's been horrendous, but actually it's not been the start to the season that was being predicted after testing, because after testing all the talk was, oh my god, it's all over, they're 23 million seconds off the pace, they're going to be nowhere, and actually it's not been as bad as predicted. Still, again, to the Mercedes fans who always come at me when I say that, by their standards, not good enough. They'll admit that, their fans will admit that, but it's not been the disaster that I think a lot of people feared it was going to be after testing and that first weekend in Bahrain. I mean, Toto was talking about it being the worst, was it Bahrain where he said the worst weekend in racing he's ever had? Something like that.
Yeah. My thing with Mercedes is in 2023 or 2022, sorry, I felt bad for them. They tried something different. It didn't work. Fine. Okay. Then we get to this year and they're like, you know what? We're convinced this concept that everybody else has not touched with the 10-foot barge pole, we're convinced we can make it work. It may have nearly broken the back of our star driver last year, but we're convinced we can make it work. And then they get to this year, oh, it didn't work. We need a complete new change of concept. And I'm like, you've had so much time to evaluate this. I feel like the answer was staring us in the face. Then again, I was so good at my engineering degree, I decided to sack it off once I graduated. So maybe I can't talk, but I do sort of get the feeling that Mercedes made their bed when it came to sticking with the new concept, despite all the data they had available to them, and it really hasn't worked. So I don't think these upgrades in particular are going to help in the grand scheme of things anyway. It might get them closer to Aston, but is it going to be enough to get them closer to Red Bull? No. Yeah. And also, as you said, bringing it to Monaco as well, it's a risk. I really hope one of them doesn't pin it in the wall now. Otherwise, that's going to be painful, given that it's only a week turnaround before we're then in Spain. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. But, yeah. And I guess any positive is Monaco might be one of the circuits that really brings it out more. If it's a downforce specific upgrade, then Monaco will really bring that out. I think Aston as well are saying that they are particularly excited for Monaco because they think it's one of the circuits where they can take the fight to Red Bull. So maybe that's why they're that eager to bring it in. But as you said, it is a massive, massive risk. Because if you hit the barrier, that goes a lot of money, and with the budget cap, you can't necessarily make that all back as quickly as you could.
I mean, then they're not talking, are they? They've talked it up, but they're not sort of saying this is the upgrade that will put us back at the front. I think there seems to be, when you listen to interviews, they talk a bit about next year, and maybe that's the year. The idea of this update isn't that they're going to springboard to the front of the grid. It's that it's going to help them catch up a little bit, and then over the course of the year, they'll keep improving is the idea. And then for next year, maybe we're looking at them being back at the sharp end. I think the battle for them this year is with Aston Martin, as you've kind of touched on there, Will, in that battle for P2 in the standings, and I think that's where they are. But you never know. We've got, how is this penalty, which I'm going to talk about a bit later for Red Bull, so we'll do that in a bit, but how is this penalty going to affect them later in the season? Is that going to allow teams like Mercedes and Aston Martin catch up? Of course, by that point, the championships could all be wrapped up anyway, so it's irrelevant, but that could help them out. There's things to bear in mind for this season, but I'm not expecting Mercedes to rock up to Monaco suddenly with the fastest car. That Red Bull is so far clear, and I still don't think even looking at Miami, where Checo, did what he could to try and fend off Max Verstappen in the end. But I don't even think there we saw everything from Red Bull. I still think they've got something that they've got in the locker, if you like. They're not giving us 100% of everything. I think the closest we got to that was after, I'm not remember what race it was now. There was a safety car recently, and they just disappeared in just a few laps. I can't remember what race it was. I know that it's not anybody's Imola. It's not anybody's fault. That was inevitably going to happen after what we saw. China obviously cancelled, but I cannot get into a flow with this season, Will. I cannot remember much about it. I can't remember race by race because we just seem to have these massive gaps in between. We've had one race in 5 weeks.
I just need to remember, and it's lights out, and the way Verstappen comes across the line to take the victory. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. That's another race done in the books. Off we go. It's not been a season for the history books at the moment, but I'm giving it time. I'm hoping after this it should get into the swing of things. We've got 2 races on the bounce, then we get into the likes of your Austria, your Silverstones, and I'm hoping, we can start to. What am I trying to say here, without annoying people?
I don't worry about annoying people. It doesn't matter what you say. Well, on the internet, you'll annoy somebody. Not you specifically.
No, I'm hoping we can just get a little bit more of a fight at the front. In that time, it's time for Aston to pick up the pieces a little bit and take the fight. I genuinely think Monaco might be one of those places. I think it was Alonso saying that there's certain tracks he's picked out, Monaco and Singapore, which ironically are the circuits where you usually favour a Red Bull over a Mercedes in the last few years. But given all of Red Bull's progress seems to have been on the straight line speed front now, it seems to be these downforce heavy tracks where they may actually be relatively weaker and more at risk. So it'll be interesting to see. I've already said that I'm predicting an Alonso win, which I think is more and more ballsy with every day that goes by. But hey, gotta love a bit of optimism, I guess, at the end of the day. And we'll see. But I just would like to see somebody other than the Red Bull come across the line in P1.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it, if maybe it's worth Aston, or whether they'll even think about this, just getting a car set up that is a killer over 1 lap for Monaco. Because if they've got Alonso on pole, I was going to say Stroll alongside him. That might be a bit ambitious because he's qualified. Do you know, it's an ongoing theme on this channel. Lance Stroll and his Saturdays, he does wind me up with his Saturdays. But if he can be out front, he can control the pace a little bit. It's going to be difficult to overtake. The problem is then you've got that, like I said earlier, let's say Verstappen's P2, he can hang back, manage his car, and then as soon as Alonso pits, floor it, and overcut him or undercut him or whatever. Obviously, traffic is important in Monaco. It's just a thought. Maybe that's something they could look at. I was going to talk a little bit while we're talking about Monaco about Checo's Championship Challenge, which is beautifully put in my notes. But I feel like we've talked about that quite a lot on Race Reactions, so I'm not going to do that. All I would say about Checo is these are the races, if he wants to challenge, he has to win, because people will push this king of the street track narrative. If that's the case, Monaco, he has to win it, because we haven't got Canada is a street track, but it's not in the same way that a Monaco or a Singapore is, is it? So it is a street track, or it's at least, it's park and street, isn't it? So it sort of is, but we haven't got a proper street track until Singapore, and that could be one hell of a run of Verstappen wins, at which point the title's done and dusted. So big weekend, I would say, for Checo. So I was going to ask you for early predictions, Will, but you've kind of said Alonso for the win. I'm guessing Alonso wins, Stroll second, and
Mazepin
maybe
third,
third.
Yeah. I'll go. What did I say on my stream yesterday? I think I said Alonso win, then Verstappen, then Perez. I think that's what I said. It's a Twitter space. No one's recorded it. I can say what I want, but yeah, that to me works. I don't think Merc are going to be in the ballpark. This is typically a race where Ferrari could do well, so don't count out Leclerc, given he's now finished his first Monaco Grand Prix. So
progress.
Yeah, exactly. Progress. So, well, we'll see. We'll see. Um, my heart is telling me the Alonso win. My head's telling me Verstappen domination, but I'm trying to be optimistic.
That's fair. No. I like the idea of an Alonso win. But it's a good point on Ferrari because I think Leclerc's going to have a little bit of frustration still over last year, isn't he? How the team sort of shafted him a little bit with strategy. I know, unheard of at Ferrari. So maybe we've seen him on pole already this season. Maybe this is a weekend where Ferrari could come good. I mean, if Sainz can deliver in qualifying, Leclerc can, and they can sort of even, dare I suggest, for a second lock out the front row, as delusional as that might sound to some people, they could be in a very good position, but then they're in a very good position last year, as I've already said, and threw that away. So I don't know what the weather's supposed to do. I did see a forecast last week, earlier this week, it's still on the same week, Sean, and that said that rain was in the air. So I'll just do a little quick check.
They had rain this weekend because they were saying some of it, I think, had come from Imola. I don't know whether that was true. But
yeah, this weekend, but not next weekend. No, you say that. I've got on my, now take this with a pinch of salt, it's the Met Office, and they're about as useful as God knows what.
Take the opposite of what you're about to say, Sean.
Their forecast is for sunshine and showers all day Friday, and then thunderstorms intermittently through Saturday and Sunday, including just in time for qualifying on Saturday. So bright sunshine, clear skies, no rain whatsoever. Every time I use a Met Office, it's so far wrong, it's ridiculous. So that was just the easiest app to get to. So yeah, we'll see. Look, my predictions, I'm going to do obviously a preview, so just off the cuff, I'll have a proper think about it for the preview on Thursday, so they might change, but off the cuff, it's nothing against Red Bull. I'm like you, I'd like to see a Ferrari or an Aston Martin or Mercedes. Let's face it, spring a surprise, because that's what it would be this next weekend. I'd love to see that, but I just can't look past looking at the season results 1-2, 1-2, 1-5, 1-2, 1-2. I can't look past Red Bull. I might do bold predictions this week for the preview, actually, this coming week, instead of serious ones, because otherwise I'm just going to be picking Red Bull 1-2 every week. So it's kind of pointless doing the video, really, isn't it? So I might do some bold ones this week to mix it up a bit, but I quite like Alonso. So we'll see what you say on Monaco in the chat, and then we'll do some Q&A as well. I know a lot of you don't like Monaco. Some of you do love Monaco. Some of you are indifferent about Monaco, which sums up the F1 fan base beautifully on everything, really, and life. Some of you love it, some of you hate it, some of you couldn't care less. But I'm with Will. There's something about Monaco, even if the race is cack. There's just something about it, but it's never going to happen. I still stand by what I said a couple of years ago. 100 laps of Monaco, non-championship event. Make a big fuss of it like the Indy 500. Although that is a championship event, isn't it, in IndyCar? But I mean, make a big... Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I had a moment there. But you could do something like that for Monaco, the Monaco 100, but 100 laps of Monaco. It's only about 20 odd more than they get now. Yeah, it's one of those for me. Red Bull are looking unstoppable this year, says Khalifa. Connor says there'll be some rain around, but much like last year, they may get trapped by the mountains to the north. CPB1 is picking Sainz, which is an interesting one. John says Yuki for the win. John says thunderstorm Thursday, possible rain on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, low chance of precipitation. I love that word. Precipitation. Yeah, it's a good word. Leclerc pole for, is it Prastelo? I've butchered that, and I'm so sorry. If Alonso wins, would he be the oldest to win a Grand Prix? No. I couldn't say who the oldest is, but I mean, Fangio and co were winning racing championships in their 40s, weren't they? And above. So I don't think he'll be... Do you know what? Let's do it.
Luigi Fagioli,
he's already
53 years 53. And 22 days.
So he's only about 7 days off. No, here's Alonso, bless him. No, but he'd be one of. So in modern day F1 terms, then he's... Oh no, I'm going to say that. I need to just check his age because it's going to depress me so much.
He's 41, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 4 years older than me, and I'm going to say this. In F1 terms, modern day F1 terms, he's ancient, isn't he? Him and Raikkonen was the same, but you just didn't... Drivers don't win races at that age, but
he would be either 7th or... Depending on when he turns 42, he'd be either 7th or 8th. I think 7th is Nigel Mansell, 41 years, 3 months and 5 days. 8th is Maurice Trintrigant, some French dude, 40 years, 6 months and 18 days. And that was also a Monaco win, interestingly, in 1958. There you go.
Let's do you a poll in chat before we get to Q&A. So we're going to do a who will win in Monaco? Who's going to win the race? I think I've just sent that in the chat without the poll, so bear with me. Yeah, I have, like an absolute donut. Let's go with a poll. What options are we going with then? I'm going to put a Red Bull because it could be either. I think I'm going to go with Alonso. Yeah, as an option.
Fair enough.
Leclerc is a good shout. Or I'll have to put other because I can only have 4 options because apparently in the world you're only ever allowed to ask people a question with 4 options. So if it's other, feel free to let me know in the chat. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about Monaco very briefly. Like I say, I just needed to come up with a topic for the stream really, and Imola and Monaco were the way to go. We've done 40 minutes. 45 minutes on them both nearly. So if you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. I've got a couple that I've got from Twitter and from the community section. But if you've got any questions, pop them in chat. Obviously, you don't have to, but the best way, if you've got a burning question that you have to ask or the world is going to end, you can do it through Super Chat because I have to read those out, provided it's within YouTube's community guidelines, so be nice. So pop in a Super Chat if you're up for that. That would be awesome. That supports the channel. And of course, it means I can read your question out. But if not, don't worry, I will come to you in chat. So I always like to bring up Super Chats, but I never, ever force or push them. I know I watch, I'm not going to name names, but I watch... a football fan channel, and I only read out Super Chats. And it's like, nah, to me, that's not how you build a community. If somebody wants to put that in, I will always prioritize that Super Chat. But if there are people in chat that want to talk, because I just think you're excluding part of your community, and I don't agree with it. So let's do Q&A. So RC, I've got some season slides I'll put up first. There you go. So you're not looking at Monaco again. RC, one of the channel OGs, says, if you had to change one rule in F1, what would it be? All of them. I'd rip up the rule book and start again. You'd think I'd have prepared for that one, and I didn't. It's the first one on my list, and I should have come to it after I thought about it a bit more. But I think I'd probably have a tweak to the red flag tyre rule. I'd still allow people to make the change, but I'd probably say that doesn't count as your mandatory stop. But, and I'm going to overcomplicate it because it's Formula One, so you can change your tyres under the red flag, but it doesn't count as your mandatory pit stop. However, when you make your mandatory pit stop, you can put on any tyre. You don't necessarily have to put on another compound or something along those lines. I suppose the best way to put it was you have to, under racing conditions, make a pit stop. Whichever way you look at it, I'd probably do that. Or even, I'd say I don't like the idea of mandatory 2 stops because we'll just have what we have now, but with an extra stop. And yes, that does add some variety, and it does open the door for mistakes, and it does open the door for overcuts and undercuts. But I don't think that's going to completely revolutionise a Sunday if we have mandatory 2 stoppers, to be honest, Will. I know a lot of people disagree. I've just seen somebody in chat say no sprints. Michael. That's the first rule Michael's changing. In the door, right, sprints, bin, now.
If I had to change a rule, this might be, I don't know, maybe it won't be controversial. I'm going to sort of go with 2 rules in one here, but remove the limit of the number of cars you're allowed to enter per team. Ooh. Or at least increase it to 3 or 4. And allow customer cars as well. If we want more teams on the grid, a more viable option of getting into the sport, customer cars. And that was a hot topic a few years ago, wasn't it? It was discussed and then thrown out the door. But the way IndyCar do it, where you've got entries like McLaren who have 3 teams, Juncos obviously have 2 now, but used to only run 1 entry per year. I just think that might make F1 a lot more of a attractive prospect from a financial point of view. If you weren't forced to run 2 cars, you could run on a budget more effectively, really, and only run 1 car. You might not help yourself in the constructors' standings necessarily, but you'll still bring things in such as sponsorship money and getting drivers in as well. I don't think it could be an alternative to get more cars on the grid, because I look at, say, IndyCar, and they haven't got an issue with that. Part of that is because Andretti have like 4 entries or something like that, and it just works. And equally, you don't. And I guess with the spec series, it's less of a concern, but you don't get as many cases of an entire team locking out the podium, which I think you might get in Formula One. But I don't know. I thought it could be a bit of fun. Customer cars, get more cars on the grid, and more exciting racing as a result.
Yeah, my only worry with things like that is then you end up with effectively 3 or 4 Red Bulls at the front, and then 3 or 4 Astons behind, and 3 or 4 Mercedes. You're taking points away from others, and it kind of ruins.
3 or 4 cars or 3 or 4 drivers going for a championship though, rather than 2.
Yeah, true. That would be entertaining. That's true. It just makes it a bit tricky. But then I suppose if you end up with, let's live in a dream world for a second, everybody does it, puts in a third car. You got a 30-car grid. You could then push points down to 15th or something like that, couldn't you? Or something along those lines, and change it there. But I do the whole, and I know this isn't a popular opinion, but I don't personally have an issue with teams buying customer cars. I wouldn't, for example, I wouldn't have any issue if they wanted to with a team like Williams buying a year-old Mercedes. They might not want to do it for this year, for last year's Mercedes, but do you know, I don't have an issue with that. But then you also have the next problem with, is that fair? Is it a Constructors' Championship? That's the next argument, but that's definitely one for another day, because I'll be here all day on that one. Dell says a green flag pit stop rule would absolutely feck over those who haven't stopped compared to those who have. Fair point. But fair point. But also, Dell, pitting under red flag also screws up those who have pitted versus those who haven't. So I think the point there is that whichever way you look at it, somebody's getting screwed, aren't they? Which is classic Formula One. CPB says I would enforce a rule where if Stefano should have read this first, never mind. Stefano Domenicali suggests something like scrapping Spa. It should be mandated to slap him in the face with a wet fish. Fair enough. Go-Kart Bob says no pitting under yellows in all racing. I know a lot of people say maybe there should be a change to the safety car rule and you can't pit. We had something, correct me if I'm wrong, we had something similar in the past where the pit lane closed when the safety car came out, and that caused all sorts of problems. But maybe that's something they could look at again. And more standardised parts, wings and floors, says Valentine. I don't want F1 to become a spec series, but there are bits in that car that I think you could spec and it wouldn't make.
Agreed.
It would help with the budget, but it wouldn't make any difference to us. I wouldn't want to see 20 identical cars, but I have no problem with. So I mean, aren't the control electronics and things like? No, it's not. Nothing Formula E. Never mind. But there are parts on the car that are spec that could quite easily be spec.
It could help with the overtaking as well.
Yeah.
If you stop teams from putting aero-y bits on the floor, for instance, the best way to do that is say, here's a floor that you're all going to use. I don't know how I feel about that. The engineer side of me is screaming right now, saying don't. But yeah, it comes down to, do you want it to be a competition or do you want it to be entertaining? I think that's the tricky thing.
The thing is, there's plenty of spec or largely spec series out there. Formula E isn't totally spec, but it's largely spec. IndyCar, I don't know a lot about IndyCar.
Besides the engines, it's more or less. Yeah, they are spec. It's like Formula 2.
So
with 2 engine manufacturers.
There's no, that's fine, and it's absolutely fine if Formula One is something different. I have no problem with Formula One being about engineering, and the team that builds the best car and gets the best driver wins the races and wins the championship. I don't see any problem with that, and I don't see any issue with having Formula One be different. Otherwise, if you just have everything as a spec series, Formula One included, then it's all the same. It's all very samey. So having an engineering championship doesn't bother me at all. I think Formula One should be that. I know that won't be popular with particularly a lot of new fans want to see, and I know this from people I've spoken to who have in my family who have recently started watching because of things like Drive to Survive. They say, well, why can't you make the cars the same and then we'll have lots of close racing? It's like, that's not what Formula One, and I don't see why Formula One needs to be that. You've got IndyCar, you've got other series that are spec. Formula 2 across a weekend, Formula 3, great racing action, but Formula One then is something different. It might not always be the best race, or you might not see a million overtakes or a ton of close racing, but there's a lot to be said for building the best car on the grid, which brings me on to a point that I wanted to bring up. Is it, I can say Buyers 100 says, look at Red Bull's punishment again. I mean, it really hampered them, didn't it? Not. A bit of sarcasm there, which is something I wanted to bring up because it's something that really frustrates me about what I read on social media when people say, oh, the punishment hasn't hurt Red Bull at all. The punishment was never going to hurt Red Bull at the start of the season for a number of reasons, but the big one being that the 2023 car will already have been pretty much signed off before the penalty was even given. The teams don't get to the end of November and go, right, that's Abu Dhabi done, that's the season done, what about next year's car? That car will have been in development since the beginning of 22, maybe even earlier than that, because the 22 car would have been signed off a bit earlier. They'd have been looking at how they're going to evolve that and how they want to move forward. So that car was signed off largely before the penalty even came in. The penalty was about punishing them later in the season, and on the 2024 car is where if you're going to see any impact at all, that's where you're going to see it. It was never, ever, ever going to make any difference at the start of this season. And I thought most people kind of got that, but apparently not. I'm not having to go at anybody. I'm just making the point. But also, and I think this needs to be said, and I don't think enough people are saying it, it was a clerical error is what it was down as. A lot of people say cheating. There was an investigation. No evidence of cheating was found. So unless you've got the evidence, I suggest maybe being careful what you say there. But what was a net, let's round it up, $500,000 is not the reason Red Bull are a second plus clear of the rest of the field. That is not. It will have helped. Of course that would have helped in 2021. Of course that would have helped in some ways, but that car is not where it is because of effectively $500,000, unless you completely disagree, Will, which you might do, but I don't buy this. Red Bull are a second plus clear of the field because they spent a net $500,000 more.
I don't. I think they're ahead of the field because they have Adrian Newey, quite frankly. But no, at the end of the day, they've done a good job, cost cap or not. They have done a good job to get that car so much further ahead than everybody else, and really, everyone just needs to catch up. So I haven't got a whole lot to add on this one, really, besides do better, which will annoy people. But yeah, and again, this is. I mean, it is, but it will still annoy people, as I'm sure you well know. So
I always make sure I make this point first before anybody accuses me of being Red Bull superfan. I said it when Mercedes were dominating, when people were moaning about Mercedes, in air quotes, ruining the sport. If you want to blame anybody for ruining the sport now, or then when Mercedes were dominating, you need to blame the Red Bulls and the Ferraris for not building a car good enough to beat them. And now you need to be blaming Mercedes and Ferrari, and to a lesser extent, because they've made a hell of a leap, Aston Martin for not building a good enough car to compete. That's what Formula One is, I'm afraid. I'm not going to make any apologies. I'm not going to go quite as far as some ex-world champions or world champions and ex-drivers have said, where they've tried to say you don't understand Formula One and that's why, because that's not what it is at all. There'll be people who don't understand Formula One, but try having a conversation with, in particular, my mum and my sister. What do you find interesting about cars just driving around in circles all afternoon? It's like, I mean, actually, you've got a fair point. You're not understanding it, but you've got a completely fair point. But I just don't. You build the best car, you get the best drivers to drive it, you're going to win, and I don't have a problem with that. I understand there's an air of frustration that the punishment hasn't immediately destroyed the team, but it was never going to do that. And as Christian Horner has said many times, I don't think he's used the words "it may not impact us," but he's often said about being not clever. What's the word I'm looking for? Selective about what they put, efficient and selective about what they put in the wind tunnel, what they test. And if they do that properly, they may not feel any impact at all. But that's just the way it goes. And I still think the punishment was about right. I know we're probably talking about people who perhaps have a bias towards another team that have this issue. I don't know, but
who would you be referring to, Sean?
Well,
I have no idea.
We have actually we're having a waffle, so I'm gonna have the conversation now. I see 3 layers of Lewis Hamilton fans. It's not just Lewis Hamilton fans, by the way. I see 3 layers of Lewis Hamilton fans. You have Lewis Hamilton fans who are largely fine. They support their driver. They love their driver. They'll always be biased towards him, but they can actually say, it wasn't a great weekend, or yes, he's to blame for that. You've then got Team LH, who, again, from my experience, are largely absolutely fine. They're just Lewis Hamilton fans. And then you've got what I think Twitter label, what do they call them?
Colt LH?
That's the one. Who just have decided to make their entire life Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi 21, and each to their own. They're entitled to do what they like, and I'm not going to judge them on that. I'll never understand that, but they are people that I can't have a conversation with. I have tried to, but you can't. I have had many a conversation with Team LH fans. I have had many a conversation with Lewis Hamilton fans, but every time I've attempted a conversation with the extreme end of the fan base, it is absolutely pointless. I put a video out a couple of years ago. It was when he was about to sign his contract and we didn't know what was happening. And I put a video out saying, when's he going to sign this contract? For goodness sake, get on with it. And I made 4 or 5 points in that video, and I think 4 of them proved to be correct, including when he signed the contract. I got the timing of that right. And the other thing is largely reported as being correct. And I got 3 or 4... Somebody tried to create a pile-on. I'm not going to name who they were. You could probably guess it'd be one of 2. Who tried to create a pile-on on me, and 3 people came at me, having a go at me. You know nothing. You know nothing about Formula One. I've been watching 7 minutes. You've only been watching 30 years. You know nothing about Formula One and all that nonsense. I've not had an apology from them because I was right. Weird that, which is why I just don't try and engage with that side of the fan base anymore, because you can't. It's impossible. I no problem with Hamilton fans, no problem with Team LH, no problem with Lewis Hamilton, but there's just an extreme end of the fan base, and he's not the only fan, the only driver to have those fans, by the way. It kind of, I'm leading us into another question, if you can kind of work it out here, Will. I'm trying to be really, really clever. And it's from Lalit Bindra, who says, I am at my breaking point when it comes to toxicity on F1 social media and only follow very curated accounts. Is it only me, or is it over for the F1 fans who can appreciate other teams and drivers they don't support? My answer to that is, on Twitter, yes, it's over. Don't even try. Come to a live stream like this, or go to Tomo's Chinwag or one of his live streams, or anybody else, and sit down and talk to them and talk to people in chat. Have a proper conversation. You can debate, you can get heated, you can get even angry if you want to, but just don't get abusive. But in terms of Twitter, I rarely have conversations even with people like Jonty now, because I know that if me and him have a conversation, somebody's going to jump in and be, quite frankly, a tosser. So I just don't see the point in wasting my time on it. I'll talk to him in DMs, like same with you, Will. After the stream, we often have a little bit of a chat. Don't you dare repeat any of it, because I'll kill you.
I mean, the thing with F1 Twitter is what it has taught me. I do think, and you have to take lessons out of these things. My interactions with F1 Twitter have taught me that the human being can, in fact, operate without the need to use its brain. And I didn't think that was possible. I genuinely didn't. But evidently, it does. And yeah, it's a shame. I do sort of feel, I'm not saying it's to blame, but I feel like it's coincided with Drive to Survive a little bit. I don't know whether that's a direct link or not. I'm sure some people will say, yes, yeah, it is. But I don't know if there's anything to back that up. But yeah, it's a tricky one. Well, I honestly wish there was some other outlet where we could go to have a genuine Formula One conversation. Maybe there's a gap in the market there. Who knows? But yeah, it's a shame, really. And I do sort of feel, especially since I'm not even going to say Abu Dhabi 2021, I'm going to say 2021 on a whole, because you still have the instance like Silverstone or Monza, or every time Lewis Hamilton gets involved in a controversy or a crash, Twitter decide, yes, let's be racist again. Let's do that. That sounds like good fun. And I'm just sick and tired of it. In all honesty. And
it's not.
you see it in YouTube comments as well. I'm sure you
Yeah,
do. I
yeah.
do all the time. I claim to be a neutral fan, and by that I mean I slag everybody off equally.
He
But
hates everyone exactly the same.
but to be fair, I know I'm a neutral fan. When under the same video, I can get the comments saying, "Oh, you Max supporter! Oh, I can't believe you're British and you support Max." And equally, I get people saying, "Oh, you're part of Cult LH." And I was like, "Okay, cool. That just means I'm doing the right thing. I'm even." But yeah, it's rough.
See, how I deal with that in the comment section, if somebody comes to me and says you're just a typical Cult LH or Team LH or whatever, I laugh at it and dismiss it now, because it's like, you don't know me clearly, so there's no point me engaging with you and defending myself, because A, I'll make myself look like I am, because you're not gonna win that argument, and B, you're clearly not that interested because you've not paid attention either to anything I've said, or you've not watched anything I've said before, or listened to anything I've said before, so you don't know me. I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan. I don't dislike him, but I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan, so it does make me giggle now, and I just sort of dismiss it a little bit. And anybody who's been following this channel long enough knows that I'm one of those rare things or what feels like a rare thing in the UK, where I'm not particularly patriotic, and I'm not somebody who, I must support the England national team and I must support the British drivers. I've never done that. I mean, I was Michael Schumacher fanboy through and through, and didn't like the likes of David Coulthard, who's Scottish but British. So that'll go down well. That's me screwed now, isn't it? It's not the same thing, but you know what I mean. Let's not get too much into it. But I think the Drive to Survive thing, just on that quickly, I'm not pointing the finger at Drive to Survive fans, because again, I've got my sister-in-law and her girlfriend. They've just got into Formula One through Drive to Survive, and they're lovely. And they ask me questions. They want to learn about Formula One. They don't just jump into the toxic social media side of it. They want to learn about Formula One, so it's not fair to blame everybody. But Drive to Survive is definitely a thing, but it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's what happens when a sport goes from being quite niche is probably the wrong word, but a little bit of a niche fan base. It's but then that fan base explodes overnight, and suddenly you've gone from, let's use very easy numbers, 10 people to 100 people. Those 100 people, in the original 10 people, you might have 2 toxic people. Well, all of a sudden in that 100 people, you've got 20 toxic people. So it gets louder, if that makes sense. I don't think there are more toxic F1 fans. I just think they're louder now. It's probably the way I put it. But this isn't a new problem. I grew up watching, through the 90s, watching the British press's attitude towards Michael Schumacher. If we had Twitter back then, particularly thinking 94, for example, 97, that final race, it'd be exactly the same. It would be exactly the same. So this isn't a new thing. It's just, if I wanted to hate on Mika Hakkinen or Jacques Villeneuve, I'd have to go out in the street and find somebody, or go through the phone book and ring everybody and tell them that I hate him. I couldn't just put it on social media. That's the difference, I think.
Can you imagine that? You just get a random phone call out the blue saying, yeah, Mika Hakkinen's a dick, and then he hangs up again.
Knocking on people's doors. I've never liked David Coulthard, he's scum. And they just sort of stand there like, all right. I've just made social media really funny now.
That's basically what Twitter is, isn't it? Yeah. Oh,
sorry.
Boy.
I went off on one. I just totally ignoring chat then. I just went off on one. I couldn't help it. So, Lee, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm not trying to attack any, even the extreme end of the Hamilton fan base. That is their choice. That's who they want to be. That's how they want to approach how they want to approach being a fan. That's their right. They can do that. But if you're going to be that kind of person, just leave me alone, because I can't be bothered, because you're not going to get much from me now. So, but I'm not one of these that wholly blames Drive to Survive, because I don't think that's fair. Clansome says 65-year-old here. I'm just trying to find if he says something else, Clansome, or if that is just you. 37-year-old here. There you go, mate. Oh, he's talking to somebody else. Go-Kart Bob says 60-year F1 fan. I thought we were just shouting ages at each other then. Why not? John says fax people. Yeah, fax. But who remembers fax machine? Well, in fact, actually, in my job, I gave up my job about 5 years ago to start this. We were still using a fax machine, believe it or not.
I'm too young for fax machines, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Shuey sent me to sleep back then as Ferrari won all the bloody time. See? Space says, Lewis polarizes people for reasons that have nothing to do with his driving. A lot of the hate is he gets his bigotry looking to conceal itself as other things. Well, just on the Lewis, just one more thing on Lewis Hamilton then, because somebody did mention it in chat. I wasn't going to say it, but I will, because it's, if you ever want a bit of a, well, no, actually, it's not that, but my favourite comment section outside of Held for Review, where I have to report numerous people every day, so I'm not going to repeat them, but is my Why is Lewis Hamilton so hated video, where if you've not seen it, it's the most watched on the channel. I just go through the ridiculous reasons that people give for disliking him and hating him, and kind of try and give my view on them and dismiss some of them or whatever. But the comment section is one of my favourites, because you'll have somebody say, this is clickbait, nobody hates Lewis Hamilton, you're a piece of shit. And then underneath there'll be this person who's done a comprehensive list of reasons why they hate Lewis Hamilton, and you're like, just scroll down before you comment. Don't tell me nobody hates him when your comment is literally above somebody telling you why they hate him. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's have a look at other questions, then I'll come to you in chat, because I did have a couple that I wanted to, we might have to do this quick fire. Oh, this is a good one. JB35. If Netflix did a season of Drive to Survive about a past season, which one would you like to see?
2010.
See, that's a good one. I was going to say 2007 because of the politics, or politics, if you want to call it politics. But that said, I did watch Senna. Like I say, I watched that last night. So actually, one of those, maybe 88, 89 would be a good year. Prost versus Senna. That could be quite a fun one to go. But I think 2007 would be the one for me. That's why I can't wait for Lewis Hamilton to release an autobiography when he retires, because there's I hope there's some juicy stuff in there about 2007, because I'm absolutely convinced we're not getting the full story.
I would say there's already a little bit in there. So he released a biography after 2007, because I remember it's one of the very rare books in the last 7 years that I've actually read. But yeah, it was very interesting. I know. It's probably one of the only books I've read in the last 10 years, in all honesty. But I think it's called Lewis Hamilton, My Story or something. And it's written basically just after 2007, before his first World Championship. Very easy read. I found it in a charity shop somewhere, and it's quite a good read, genuinely. If anyone hasn't picked it up, yeah, some people in chat saying they've already got it. I thought it was quite interesting, and I cannot remember for the life of me what was said about 2007 and the politics behind it, but it was definitely brought up, and it was sort of fresh in the moment as well, so you got a little bit of the raw reaction from it. Again, we won't have got everything, and I'm sure we won't get everything until this supposed biography comes out when he retires, but I remember there being some juicy stuff in there.
I'll have to keep an eye out for that one. John T signed a multi-year deal with Netflix to have an extended run of Drive to Survive series. 1976, 1982, 89 and 90, 1994 and 2003. There you go. So Jonty Flicks, that sounds really wrong. Let's roll on quickly. Let's not even do that. Let us know in chat if you pick. Clansom says 2008. Sachi says 2008 as well, which would be good. Mark Priestley's book is pretty good on the 2007 season. He was a McLaren mechanic, says John Jones. So I'll have a look at that one. CPB says DTS 2014-16, just Lewis and Nico drama. That could be fun. Michael says Drive to Survive is hype, not facts. It's garbage, not factual. I agree with part of your comment, Michael. The only thing I like about Drive to Survive, and I'm aware before you say it that I'm not the target market, but the only thing I really like about Drive to Survive is that we do get to see a bit of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we don't normally get. Some of that, like that meeting that they all had where Christian Horner's like, build a better car, and Toto Wolff's like, oh, kiss my ass, and Christian Horner's like, your mum, or whatever it was. That was either completely staged, or they were playing up to the cameras, or whatever. That just did, none of that felt real, or it was just edited to a way that it didn't feel real. But there are bits that we don't normally get to see that I quite like behind the scenes, and stupid things that don't matter, I know, but I like that. The racing is what matters to me most, but I do quite like that one. So that's the good thing about that one. 76 for James Hunt, says Go-Kart Bob, and Clansom agrees. Just have a Fast and Furious style trilogy of DTS from 88 to 93, says Connor Edwards. Let's have a look at the question we've got. Then we'll come to you in chat. We'll do one more. So I've done one I did two from Twitter. So let's do another one from the YouTube side. Then we'll come to chat and any super chats that come in as well. I feel like I answer that one all the time, so we're not going to go with that one. Who do you think is the best F1 driver that never won a race? That's from Yori1234. I put 1, 2, 3, 4 options down. Not necessarily in this order. Tom Price, Stefan Beloff, Chris Amon, and Martin Brundle were 4 that came to mind immediately when I read that question. Somebody did reply to them saying, of the current generation, maybe someone like a Hulkenberg. I like the Hulk. I'm not sure he's one of the best drivers to never win a race, but each to their own and all that. So what have you got, Will? I feel bad. I've just thrown that at you and didn't even send you that beforehand. Like, all of them.
Jesus, I like the idea of Martin Brundle. That's up there. Hulkenberg was the first name that came to my mind as well before you said it. It's difficult. I find it hard to sort of defend them as well. When I put one down, it's like, yeah, he's a really good driver. He may not have won anything, but he's a really good driver. Heidfeld, that's good. Yeah. Alesi won a race, though. That's from Relics. I think Alesi, was it a Canada race?
Yeah.
I can't remember what year it was. 1903?
Yeah. Maybe. I can tell you in a minute.
I can't remember. But otherwise, he would have been on that list. Fair enough. Jev? Ooh, that's quite good. I feel like Jev didn't get his fair crop in Formula One, in all honesty.
95 Canada. Sorry for Jean Alesi.
Yeah, I'm K-Mag? Maybe. I'm not sure on any of these, to be honest, but I'll throw those names out. Grosjean or Norris is quite a good bet.
Jonty says Chris Amon will always take that crown for him.
My knowledge of F1 before the 90s, maybe even before the 2000s, is a little patchy, so that's why I'm a little bit... Yeah.
You need to put that Lewis Hamilton book down and start reading more books, Will.
Yeah, I know.
How many times have you read the Lewis Hamilton? It's just on repeat. It's the only book he reads now.
Tell you, maybe something
that and a history of tunnels.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Oh, I don't know. I've chucked some names out there. I think that's yeah. A lot of these I'm taking from the chat as well. Bianchi might be able to throw out there as well. We never really saw what he was probably capable of, but I think he would have ended up as a future Ferrari driver, replacing Raikkonen at some point. So yeah, there you go. There's a few names for you.
True story. And this is before Channel 4 stole the name. Before I started doing this, I had a blog which didn't have a lot on it, called On the Marbles. Yeah, I know. I should sue. It's a disgrace. And I don't even know if it's out there anymore. Probably isn't. And my prediction for, I think it was 2015, a couple of years before we got there, or something around there, was Sebastian Vettel, Jules Bianchi at Ferrari with Christian Horner and Adrian Newey. I just had a feeling at that point in my life that was going to be Ferrari would go all out for a competent team principal, the best designer they could get their hands on, and then they go with a world champion and one of their young drivers to build around for the future, realising that they needed to do something, but it never happened. Well, part of that happened. I was right about Seb for 2015, so there you go. But I was, and it's not because people are quite skeptical, as you know, but it's not because he died that I think he would have been in a Ferrari. If you watched Jules Bianchi pre-F1, read about him pre-F1, listened to what people were saying before he got to Formula One, and watched him in Formula One, then he's one of those, in some, a little bit like Leclerc in some ways, in that you watched him in his junior career and you kind of read up on him and you sort of thought I always felt Leclerc would be in a Ferrari one day. In fact, I think one of the first videos in the channel was an F1 Future Stars video where I'd said, Leclerc needs to be in a Ferrari, it needs to be in Formula One next season. He got a seat at Alfa Romeo Sauber. So a bit like that with Bianchi, in that it just always felt like he would make it to F1 and would always end up in a Ferrari. And obviously, we will never know. It is now just speculation, unfortunately. But he was a rapid, and a lot of the highlights from his brief Formula One career. But the one that everyone will always go to, I think, is that move in Monaco at Rascasse.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I think I saw Bianchi was GP2 Asia Series 20, I want to say 11, might be later than that. No, it must have been 11 because he was against Grosjean in it, and he should really have won that series. I think Grosjean not taken him out at one stage. But straight away, you were like, he's good. He's really good. And yeah, I mean, sorry if I've sort of taken this down a bit of a dark path now, but he when he got to Formula One as well, he was on it and he was rapid. Given the car that he had underneath him, he was on one.
Yeah, he was. I'm not going to talk about him anymore. It bums me out. It just does. He was the driver that I was really getting behind. But there you go. That's the dangers of F1. Again, back to the Senna thing last night I was watching. Let's roll on. If you've got any questions, please do pop them in chat. Obviously, super chats will take priority, as I say, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine. Just pop your question in chat and we'll answer some of those. We'll close this poll. It can be anything F1 related. We'll do this for a few minutes and then we'll wrap it up. We're going to end up. Well, I actually got the timing wrong. I don't think Indy quali's till 7, is it, Will? I'm not going to keep you here till 7. Don't worry, mate. It's the Indy 500 that's at 5:30 next Sunday, so it'll be the Monaco one that we need to end before 5:30. So we've got a few minutes to do a few questions. I still maintain if I actually streamed more often, then these streams will be shorter because I wouldn't feel like I need to get everything out in one stream. So on that note, brace yourself for Monaco weekend, because at the moment my head, and it all comes down to whether or not my imposter syndrome goes, no, you can't because you're scum. Woohoo, mental health. But the plan is for the preview on Thursday, a new stream on Saturday between FP2 and qualifying, where we're just going to waffle for an hour and talk about look ahead to qualifying and all that. Considering doing a race look ahead on Sunday as well. And then Will, because he's crazy, is joining me for Monaco's race reaction next week. I'm now hoping he's remembered he said that, because am I? Excuse me.
I remember.
That's all right. And I am contemplating, because going back to that thing I said a couple of weeks ago about moving the race reaction to Monday, maybe pre-recording a 10-minute raw reaction. So when I do my race reactions, I'm always like, hey guys, Sean here, blah, blah, blah. And then I sort of say what I thought of the race in sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I might just turn that into a video and throw that out anyway straight after the race and then do the stream on a Monday night. But that's for another day. So lots of streams is the plan across a race weekend, because they're just easy to do rather than faffing about with videos. And it's nice to just sit and hang out with F1 fans. But who will win in Monaco is the question. And you went 50% said a Red Bull. 28% said Alonso, 14% Leclerc, and 6% said other. My favourite driver, other. I think he's fantastic. Absolutely best driver out there. So, yes, if you have any questions, throw them in. Connor says, which is better, the Indy 500 or Monaco? I've watched one Indy 500. That was with Jonty last year. If Jonty's still here, I miss you, mate. It feels weird. It feels weird now. It'll never be the same. Never be the same. Indy weekend will always be that weekend. Jonty came and was the perfect house guest, by the way. So if you're looking for a perfect house guest, Jonty is the one. I just get offering up Jonty's services to everybody. Makes a cracking cup of tea. Has really terrible taste in music like me for the most part, and loves his racing. So there you go. Jonty says Indy is better. Big Man Pat says Indy is better. What do you reckon? I mean, I've watched one Indy 500 and 30 Monaco Grand Prix, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. So, Will, I know you watch your Indy as well and you enjoy it, so I'll throw that at you.
I mean, I've watched, 5, 6 Indy 500s now. I think the first one I watched was Alonso's first attempt in 2017. I've watched one since, I think. As much as I love Monaco, I do prefer the Indy 500. I hate to say it, but and that's nothing against the Indy 500. It's just because I love Monaco, but it is the more exciting spectacle out of the two. Yeah, so Indy 500, but for different reasons. Monaco has its own flair as well.
Nothing's happened to Jonty, by the way. He's still here. He came to stay for the weekend for Monaco and Indy last year and helped me with the PC upgrade. So it's weird without him. Yeah, and I knew it was your birthday yesterday, Jonty, but I didn't message you because I know how much you hate your birthday. So I was going to wait until tomorrow to be like, happy Monday. at least it's another year now till the next one, mate. So who was the worst driver to win a race? Says Space. Relics has my answer straight away. Pastor Maldonado.
Yeah, probably.
Bless him. No, it's a tough one because I can't really go too far back. I can only go back to sort of the early 90s, mid 90s. Trying to think of driver surprise winners. Olivier Panis won in Monaco in 96. Not saying he's the worst
Trulli?
one. Yeah, Heikki Kovalainen.
Yeah.
He won a race. Although isn't he like officially the 4th fastest driver in F1 history according to F1 or something stupid like that?
Oh, I've forgotten about that.
Oh, stats tell the full story, don't they? I was trying to think of the drivers that surprise winners. I don't know. Frenson's not one. He very nearly dragged Jordan to a title, for goodness sake, in 1999. If he'd have just won him the Nürburgring without that mechanical issue. Oh my days, could you imagine that finale? Hakkinen taking on Irvine and Frenson, lines you never thought you'd have heard. De Cesaris, did he win?
I think he did.
Oh,
Google this
it's
now.
Paradigm says he. I don't know if Paradigm's being sarcastic. Sorry, he might have been sarcastic. I don't know. No, that's fine. Alessandro Nannini says Jonty. Eddie Irvine says Jonty as well. It's the thing is, and Space kind of following up on his own point. He says you'd think winning a race would make a driver not rubbish. The thing is, you can fluke a win, can't you? Well, not fluke it, but you can be one of those races where, or have one of those races where like 5 cars finish and you just haven't stuck it in a wall or whatever. So I think you. I don't think there's ever been people that are bad F1 drivers, but they've still made it to F1, even if they've paid for their seat. They still had to come through the junior categories, didn't they? So they're not bad drivers. They're just not on the level of some that we've seen through F1 history is probably what I'm going to say there. But that's one to think about, I think, definitely. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I've been in and out. Midfield predictions for Monaco, says John Marshall. Midfield predictions for Monaco. I'd like McLaren to do well, Will. I'd like them to have a good weekend. Alpine have come on good, haven't they? Alpine have found a bit of pace.
Yeah.
He's not sold on that statement at all, is he? Yeah, if you want.
No, I don't know. Alpine have had a bit of a mixed up year. Haas could be fun to watch. But I really don't know. The midfield seems in a different state every single time. Williams, no, I don't know. I don't know actually.
They're like a low
downforce track, don't they?
Like low drag. Long straight, slippery car is what I just refer to it as.
Yeah. So Williams, I don't think will be anywhere. Maybe McLaren, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. That was great insight, I know.
I mean, Ocon didn't fit. I mean, he was 12th last year in Monaco, but I seem to recall he was in the mix with everything going on. Particularly, I think it was contact with Lewis Hamilton, wasn't there, at one point? So maybe. I think I want to see McLaren do well. I'd like to see McLaren as best of the rest, but I'm not really, like you with Alpine, I'm just not really sure where McLaren are. But I think that's one of the really enjoyable things about this season is that your best of the rest, let's say 5th best team, each weekend is really hard to pick because it could be Alpine, it could be McLaren. Haas might surprise you. I mean, where was Magnussen? Was it Miami where he was top 4 on the grid? Something like that. Where is it? Yeah, 4th.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you just all of a sudden somebody comes and springs a surprise because it's nice and tight in there. So I'll go with McLaren because I want them to do well this weekend. That would be cool. I'd quite like that one. Isn't Aston Martin best of the rest as it's Red Bull then the rest of the field? Fair enough, Connor. Yeah. Yeah, it is Red Bull then everybody else, isn't it? I like to pick somebody behind the top 4 teams for best of the rest, but I'll take your point, definitely. Any more questions? Let's see. Johnny Herbert won a race. He did indeed. I wouldn't say he's one of the worst, though. Or is it driving not to win a race? Oh, yeah, sorry, that's a conversation on that one. So, yeah, Johnny won Silverstone 2005. Not 2005 at all. 1995. That would have been an achievement. What would be your driver number, says Big Man Pat? Do we have to pick one that doesn't exist or what that isn't being used?
I was going to say, mine would be 14 because my birthday's the 14th of May. But, yeah, if I had to pick one that isn't being used, 99 for the same reason Sutil did. It's the biggest number.
Herbert won Nürburgring 99 as well, didn't he? Silverstone 95, Nürburgring 99, in that race where everybody led and just kept falling off the track. I need to go and Google Johnny Herbert now because I feel like there's another one in there somewhere. I've got in my head. Sorry, that totally off the topic of driver numbers. I do apologise. So he won 3. Johnny Herbert did, and his wins were. I won Italy that year as well in 95. So Silverstone 95, Monza 95, and Nürburgring 1999 in a Stewart. 1-3, I think, on that day for Stewart. Sorry, that was a little bit off topic. Yes, a driver number. If it's driver numbers that are available now, I'd probably go with number 7 because it's a cliche. But if it's something personal, could go in 92 when I started watching F1, or 24, my birthday would be pretty cool. I do like the number 9. I've got a thing about the number 9 though, so probably if that was available, I'd go with that. I don't know if that was Marcus Ericsson's number, wasn't it? Number 9.
Was it not Mazepin's?
Is it Mazepin? Oh dear. Yeah. I love that guy. I just love the number 9.
That'll be quoted now. That's
clipped. They should introduce negative driver numbers or fractions. Says space -11 or 2/5 would be my number. Fair enough.
That's brilliant. I love that. Driver fractions. That's incredible.
Raoul says, at Monaco, which teammates will have the biggest gap? Good question. Alonso over Stroll.
I was about to say the exact same thing. Yeah, Alonso over Stroll.
Stroll doesn't always qualify well. I've just got a feeling. Will's got me excited for Alonso this coming weekend, so I'm ready to tell him off on Sunday for that one. I think Alonso could do well in. I think Alonso over Stroll. You could maybe say perhaps possibly Albon over Sargent, but I think Sargent sort of seems to be finding a little bit of pace now, which is good.
Sonoda and De Vries as well, maybe.
De Vries did out-qualify Sonoda last time.
But this is Monaco. De Vries will put it in the wall. So.
What, Sonoda won't?
Well, actually, that's a good point.
No, I'm joking. So I'm going to maintain Sonoda's he has had one of the most consistent starts to the season. 11-11, 10-10-11. Sonoda's surprised me this year, actually. Positively surprised me. Clansom says Sonoda, De Vries. Number 7 isn't being used at the moment, so I could have gone with number 7 rather than 9 and making myself look like a Mazepin fanboy. I'd go with 6 because I've always liked that number for some reason, says Eamon. Sonoda has really stepped up this year, says John. He absolutely has. I think John T. Go and have a look at John T's Twitter feed because he made an excellent point about AlphaTauri last week, I think it was, or the week before, and where the pace is of that car. So definitely go and check that if you haven't seen that already. What about 13? My lucky number, says Michael Dixon. Didn't Maldonado run 13? Just because of the lols, I seem to think.
I think he did, yeah.
Just that kind of guy, wasn't he? Like, superstition? What superstition? CPB says, predict 5 current drivers on the grid who hasn't won a Grand Prix yet, who could or will win a Grand Prix in the future. 5 drivers. I'll go first if you want, mate. Give me a minute to think about that, because that's a real on-the-spot moment. So, are you ready for the obvious? Yeah, you ready? Lando Norris.
Wow.
Because everyone has to say Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri. On the current grid who haven't won a race, there's not that many. You'd think I'm bonkers, but with where the car is, a chaotic weekend and a bit of drama this season, let's say, Lance Stroll could nick something.
Fair enough.
He's probably going to need... I feel awful because I love Lance Stroll, but it's going to need a bit of chaos, but it's possible. He's not awful on a Sunday, is it? It's his Saturdays. God damn his Saturdays. So, Norris, Piastri, a Stroll if everything falls his way. I could see Alex Albon getting picked up by a top team again, you know.
I was literally about to chuck Albon's name in there.
Just double check that question, because if it has to just be F1 drivers, I'm running out, because
Magnussen?
I don't see him getting picked up by a top team again, which frustrates me a little bit, because I think Magnussen's better than he's given credit for. I really do. I don't think all in equal cars he's going to be beating your Verstappens and your Hamiltons and your Alonsos and your Leclercs, but I think he's a much better driver than people give him credit for. 5 drivers on the grid who haven't won a Grand... Yeah, because it's tricky now, because De Vries won't. Some say he may struggle to see out the season. I can't see Sargent doing it, but then I'm basing that on a sample size of 5 races, so that's maybe a bit harsh on him. I don't think Tsunoda will. I don't see Zhou doing it. Ocon's done it. I don't see Hulkenberg doing it. Gasly's won one. I don't see... Well, then you've got Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, Hamilton, Alonso, Perez and Verstappen have all won, haven't they? So I'm not sure, Will. K got 4, and one's a stretch.
Yeah, I can only really throw sort of... was K-Mag in that 4? If not, chuck Hulkenberg in. But again, they're stretches. And I think it's more just down to the fact that there aren't any others. Zhou won't get a seat outside Alfa Romeo. And even then, I don't think he'll stay in that seat by the time Audi come along. So I don't see him doing it. Sargent, as much as I like the guy, I think he's going to be a solid driver for Williams eventually, but not be able to go any further. And who aren't we talking about at that point? I think we basically mentioned everyone who hasn't got a win yet. Unless there's someone blaring the obvious that I'm missing. But yeah. Why would Zhou not get a seat? I think it's I think it's just more the fact that I can't see who else needs the money anymore.
Yeah.
In that, I'm just trying to picture where he would go outside Alfa Romeo. Maybe a Williams, and that's it. That could work actually, but I just can't see. Yeah, I don't see where else he could go.
Realistically, unless a team like McLaren suddenly makes a jump to the front or Alpine get it right, you're looking at Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and maybe Aston Martin, if they can sustain this, as the teams that are most likely to be able to win a race in the next few years. Are any of them going to pick up Zhou Guanyu? I don't see that they would. Like, they wouldn't need the money. And based on what we've seen so far, I think Zhou is better than people say he is. I think he had a better year last year than people gave him credit for. I think he's had an okay start to this year, got a couple of points on the board as well in a car that is sort of a little bit all over the place. But I don't, unless he has a massive upturn in form, I don't see, or a massive upturn in his performances, if you like, really starts to drag things out of that car. I don't see one of those teams taking him on. But maybe, you know, a McLaren, if Norris were to go, they might say, well, Zhou's been pretty handy these last 2 or 3 years. Let's put him in for 2026. And it turns out McLaren are the best car. So it's one of those things where it could actually work out for him. But I don't see somebody picking him up outside of, like you say, maybe a Williams and Alfa Romeo, maybe AlphaTauri if they're looking for somebody, depending on which way they go for the future. But I think that's going to be your Lawsons and co, realistically. It's difficult. I'm going to ruin his career in one statement. I do really rate Oscar Piastri. There you go. I also rated Stoffel Van Dorn for anyone who's new to the channel, and I ruined his F1 career. There you go. Thank you very much to John Marshall for becoming a new member. Thank you so much, mate. Appreciate that support. Just for anybody interested, you can become a channel member to support the channel long term. You can also become a patron as well. Links in the description. Had 3 or 4 new patrons over the last week or so. So thank you everyone who signed up over there. Massively appreciate that. Long-term support. Links in the description as always. I've promised to plug that a little bit more. So there we go. Yeah, I think that's it for me, I'm afraid. Norris, well, I've named them, but one or two are a bit of a if things go their way stretch, I think. No Japanese driver has ever won a race. Would love to see Yuki win one, says John Jones. No, they haven't, have they? I trust you, John, but I had to think about that then.
Yeah, that makes me think, could we chuck Sato in under the best drivers who haven't won a race, maybe?
Kobayashi.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see a couple more questions then and comments, and then we'll wrap up if nobody's got any more for us. We've done that one. Just trying to make sure I'm not reading out people's conversations. Space says there aren't 5 drivers on the grid who will win a race, though. It's one of those things, though. Things can go your way. I mean, people wouldn't have picked Pierre Gasly to win Monza a few years ago, would they? Or for Esteban Ocon to win Hungary. Yeah. It happens sometimes. DJ Watto says Norris, Piastri, Albon, Yuki and Stroll. Not bad picks at all, mainly because they're very similar to ours. So you see, there you go. Yuki is on fire. Says no one that you know. Cool name. He's like I say, Mr. Consistent this season, definitely. I would love to see Iwasa win, says Relics. That actually, I'll tell you what we'll do, because you're here and you like your junior sport as well, your junior categories as well, Will, and then we'll wrap it up for today, unless somebody throws something epic in the chat that I have to read out. I need to find it, and I bet I haven't written it down. So it was over on Twitter, I believe. So bear with me 2 seconds while I go and find it. It was something to do with Liam of the Lawson. That's his full name, apparently. I'm just trying to fill some time here. Let's see. So it was from Phil Pott, because I don't use his full name, just Phil Pott. When is Lawson getting that Alpha Tauri seat? And that also leads into something that some guy said, which is genuinely their username. Do you think the current grid size is sustainable, or will young drivers who are very talented not even try and reach F1 if they don't think they have a large enough backing to get the chocolates? Great way of putting it. So on Liam Lawson, I think I said this last week, actually. There's a lot of talk around AlphaTauri, isn't there, about maybe not. I've not seen anyone specifically say go back to the Toro Rosso name, but maybe not do the AlphaTauri branding anymore, which I think would open up the door to a return to Toro Rosso and hopefully that beautiful livery, the nice blue one. Would love that. So there is that sort of hovering around. And I do wonder if maybe next year will be a reset, because Yuki will have had 3 seasons. They might keep him on if he continues what he's doing at the moment, but they may choose not to. Obvious statement, he might be there, he might not. I mean, that was brilliant, wasn't it? How on the fence was that? Perfect.
Hello, Will Buxton.
Either will be or it won't be. Yeah, Bill Wuxton. That's my new name. That's what I'll call the channel if they ever decide I can't call it this anymore, just the Bill Wuxton. And I don't see, if De Vries sees out the season, I don't see him staying on next year. He's always felt like he's sort of filling that void there for me. So I think next year we'll see 2 new drivers in that car or in that team. And I think Liam Lawson could well be one of them. I think next year is probably the earliest for Lawson. I never thought he was going to be in the car this season. A lot of people thought he was. I just didn't think he was quite ready. Or would be, sorry. I didn't think he was quite ready. So I think this year he's got a shot. Or for next year he's got a shot. How's he doing in the championship, actually? He's wrong championship, Sean. He's just won today, hasn't he? Liam Lawson.
I know he qualified second. I hadn't seen who'd won yet.
Oh, sorry.
You've ruined it for me, Sean.
Liam Lawson. No, he crashed out today. Oh, it was terrible. He's out of the race and he didn't do very well at all. There you go. So my point is he's doing well in Super Formula. So if we can get those Super license points, maybe next year. In fact, the fact he's in Super Formula maybe tells you that's the goal, is to get him in the car for next year, get those points, those Super license points. But I'm going to throw something out there before I come to you, Will, which I think could prove a little bit controversial, or people might find it quite funny. There is the talk of Daniel Ricciardo replacing Nick De Vries. It's on the back of you'll love this, Daniel Ricciardo having been in Europe for a wedding. People have put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5. Some people saying he's been for a seat fit at AlphaTauri, which even if he had been, it could have been for something to do with anything, filming days or whatever, couldn't it? It doesn't necessarily mean that, but that's been dismissed by Red Bull. Don't forget, Helmut Marko once said Gasly was safe and then 3 days later dropped him, so you never can quite tell. But I think Daniel Ricciardo replacing Nick De Vries, if he doesn't pick up an AlphaTauri unhappy, is possible. But I do wonder, and it may be Ricciardo, it may be somebody else, but I do wonder if maybe they might take a different approach next year, AlphaTauri. If they don't want to keep Tsunoda and they don't keep De Vries, could they look at perhaps bringing in Lawson and partnering him with a more experienced driver to kind of help him to grow, rather than doing what they used to do and just throwing 2 rookies in that car and hoping one of them sticks, which is kind of how it always felt with Toro Rosso. Maybe a Ricciardo alongside a Lawson, or maybe they go and sign a Hulkenberg. I'm just completely speculating there. They're not going to sign Hulkenberg, but you see what I mean? Just maybe do a slightly different experience with youth.
Yeah, I mean, half of that, that was part of their plan, wasn't it, initially with De Vries? I know he's technically a rookie, but he was this more experienced hand that they initially said was going to lead the team, I think, at one point. I think putting Ricciardo in would be really interesting to gauge Tsunoda, because I'm not necessarily convinced by Tsunoda yet, because I think he had a sort of lukewarm first couple of years in the sport. This year looks better, but part of me wonders if maybe that's just because Nick De Vries is his teammate.
The Schumacher-Mazepin effect. How do you gauge Mick Schumacher up against someone like Mazepin?
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder if you chuck Ricciardo in for, say, the last 7, 8, 9 races, gauge where Yuki is compared to him. If Yuki can beat Ricciardo, especially now, given that Ricciardo is saying that he's got his mojo back, that Red Bull are saying that he's gone back to the Ricciardo of old in the simulator. If, and it's a big if, Yuki can then hold his own against Daniel, that might be enough to keep him in the seat and maybe build him up for taking Perez's spot. And that's not to say that Perez deserves losing his spot, but we know what Red Bull are like at the end of 2024 when Perez's contract expires. Whereas if they put Ricciardo in and he trounces Tsunoda, then there's no need to putting any more money into Yuki, and they can look at maybe keeping Ricciardo there if he wants to be there as this experienced hand that you were on about, and putting him alongside a Lawson or an Iwasa or something like that, and use them not just necessarily as an experienced hand to guide them through the process, which I think would be good, but also as a gauging point to see, okay, this guy is good. We can look at him a little bit further. He's not being able to even beat Ricciardo. Sack him off then. Let's try somebody else. That's my take on it.
Fill in the blank says Yuki didn't look too bad against Pierre last season, whereas Danny's form was not there at McLaren. Maybe he can come good at other seats, but is that worth it over Liam? I think for me, it just depends whether Toro Rosso do want to just go, right, Lawson and Iwasa, let's go for it, or whether, because you have to remember next year as well, a lot's changing. You know, Franz Tost is gone. Lauren McKees is, we think, for next season coming in. It may take a little bit longer to get him in, depending on gardening leave, but he should be in. They've got Peter Bayer coming in as well. They're going to be looking at new drivers because Tsunoda's had his 3 years and they might keep him, they might not, as I say. De Vries will depend. I mean, if De Vries starts absolutely killing it in the rest of this season, they might keep him on as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of change at that team, and I do wonder if maybe a slight change in approach. What I would say, to upset Daniel Ricciardo fans, sorry Annette if you're listening to this later, I think you're more likely to see Ricciardo in an AlphaTauri in the future than a Red Bull. Is kind of where I'm at, because I still don't think Daniel Ricciardo is this washed up terrible has-been that some people think he is, but his stock did take a bit of a kick in the nuts, didn't it? Let's be honest, with his time at McLaren, particularly last year. So I think he's going to be needing to look at potentially rebuilding that a little bit. So I think you're more likely to see him at a team like an AlphaTauri, somebody potentially in that midfield before he's going to be in a Red Bull. I think Red Bull will be quite happy to stick with what they got for now, to be honest, for the long term. A couple of very quick fire questions then. Yes or no we'll go with for these. Michael says, do you think Red Bull dominate until 2026? I think they will. I'm going to say no.
I'm going to agree. I think... Sorry, I've said yes or no. But
you may elaborate. The only point I say no is I think they may well win all the championships, but I don't think I think as the field closes up, converges, I think it'll be closer.
Yeah, agreed. And I think also, given that we're still yet to see the proper repercussions of their penalty, that could help bring that about sooner rather than later. So I think they'll be there or thereabouts, and they'll be fighting for wins till 2026. But necessarily winning every championship, I'm not gonna write that on the wall just yet.
Who do you think will replace Alonso when he retires? Asks John Jones. If he retires, he could be here forever.
Lewis Hamilton. I'm going to chuck that name in there.
Ooh,
again, I was having a chat with somebody about this recently, and I can't remember who it was. But say Aston start to carry on with this trend, and let's be honest, they've got this new wind tunnel, this new factory coming in. They have the resources behind it. If it gets to the stage where Mercedes still can't get their act together, Alonso's retired, Aston wants someone in there for a year or 2 years, and they are at the front of the table, and they'll say, right, Lewis, come on, let's get you your 8th title, then Lewis can retire. I think he'd take it. If Mercedes are still nowhere. Because it'd still be somewhat linked to Merc, provided Aston haven't gone to Honda Power, which I know is rumoured. But, yeah, there you go.
Norris or Leclerc? There you go.
Fair enough.
John says, have you stopped playing that shitty excuse for a Fallout game yet? I've never played New Vegas, mate. That'll mean nothing to most people. Martin Whitmarsh connection as well, says Clansom, with the Lewis Hamilton thing. I'm not sure what their relationship was like.
Well, with McLaren.
Yeah.
I don't know. Martin was just sort of there. He was yeah. I don't know. I never really rated Whitmarsh, really, because he sort of carried on with what Dennis was doing, but then never. He's sort of a bit like how Domenicali started out strong initially because he was still working with what Jean Todt and Ross Brawn had before that. But then as his reign went on, things started to peter out, and that kind of brought us about to the McLaren where we're in now, who just aren't that driving force at the top of Formula One anymore.
I think that's it, Will. Just looking through chat, there's a lot of conversations going on that I'm kind of keeping an eye on as well that are interesting. What was I going to say? I was going to throw a question at you very quickly to end on, Will, from me, and I've forgotten what it was now. Oh, no, you've sort of already answered it. I'll throw it at you just for anyone just coming in. Who's winning Monaco, mate, in a word?
Fernando Alonso. Let's go with it.
There you go. That's your Monaco. Yeah. I'll go with Verstappen because I'm boring. But I'd love a Leclerc or a Alonso or a Russell or Hamilton win, to be honest. That'd be pretty cool. Thank you very much, mate. I said an hour and a half. We've been nearly 2 hours, which actually for me is impressive. Normally if I say an hour and a half with 4, so that's not actually too bad. There's progress being made. Hopefully, like I say, with more live streams, I'll have less to waffle on about. So, it's a nice way to spend a Sunday, mate. Good to talk to you, and I imagine you're off to watch Indy Quali, so enjoy.
I will indeed. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
I pressed the wrong button. It's working now. There we go. Thank you very much to Will. Thank you as well to you guys for tuning into this bit of a random waffly Sunday stream. Like I say, needed a couple of topics to get us started, and that's what we went with. So nice to talk to you all. I couldn't not stream today. It should have been a race. Completely support and understand the reasons behind why we don't have a race, but I still need to stream and talk to you all. So thank you to everyone who came out today. Please do drop a like on the stream. We're 4 away from 100, and we've only had about 200 here. So if we could get to 100, that would be absolutely amazing. So please do drop a like. As I say, lots more streams coming up in the future. I will be back on, if not before, on Thursday with the Monaco Grand Prix preview, unless it gets cancelled on Wednesday again. And then there'll be a video about the cancellation. It won't get cancelled, I'm sure. But preview and tyre talk, of course, on Thursday. Then I'll be live across the weekend on Saturday and Sunday with some new streams and the usual race reaction as well. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that content. We've hit 100 likes. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Bill for his super chat and to John for becoming a member. Massively appreciated. If you want to support the channel, you can do through Patreon, through Streamlabs and PayPal, and the membership. All of that stuff is in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.